to the website or on the website and getting them to convert more based on the stimulus that is being created. So a lot of stimulus, does create that intent. We got to satisfy that too. The manufacturer, though, as you say things like that, they spend billions of dollars on the broadest level of stimulus so that they can create a lot of that intent that we can focus on the website and target through some of those programmatic channels a little bit more efficiently, right? And again, as we have our automotive hats on, in this industry, and Google, if you're a Google partner or Google Premier partner, has all sorts of studies for every single vertical. It's very, very helpful to understand, again, what's the consumer doing. We want to really know what they're doing so that we can be as high impact as we can in influencing their decision on where to buy or what to do with the purpose that we're helping out our different companies, right? So on Google, usually there's on average 24 different touch points within the auto industry. 19 of those are digital in terms of what are the considerations they take along the way. They could see a TV ad, they can look at a newspaper ad, they can test drive a vehicle, hear stuff from friends. 19 of those are digital touch points. So if we can, through the research that's available to us, better understand what it is they're looking for and create a content and a plan around what the things are that we can be the influencer, the sole influencer, or have as many of those 19 touch points as possible. If you can be giving them a loan calculator or having a video out on your website that matches the intent of that search, or coming up with lease options and prices and all these different things that could influence them, then you're the one doing it and not the competition and not a third-party site. So it's a matter of what are they doing. So that's kind of the framework for the whole discussion here. Is when you're looking at your current SEO strategy, are you considering conversion first? And do you have an idea for what your biggest opportunities are? How well are you dominating those intent searches or those searches where the consumer is telling you that they intend to buy and you have a great idea for how you show up in those different searches and how well you're beating out the competition. If you're not showing up well, then put a lot more emphasis on that. But if you are driving a whole lot of clicks to your website and they're not doing what you want them to do, then it's just a whole lot of waste on the SEO side. And I think one of the things that, especially when you're talking about small to medium-sized businesses, is that they largely know that SEO is important to them now. And most companies that we've come across have some level of SEO investment. A lot of them still have a little bit of confusion over what that really means and what goes into making success for that. But very few are focused on the conversion piece and how efficient their website is in actually accomplishing the goals and purposes of the different sites. So that's the question. Do you have a bigger opportunity for traffic or conversion? So show of hands to get an idea for the conversion in this room. How many people in here are familiar with Google Analytics and have goals set up in their Google Analytics? So about half the room. Okay, good. Anyone who doesn't have this set up and works in the SEO world or works on a website, I would say I'd highly encourage you guys to all have this set up. So the question is, what's the purpose of your website? I think a lot of companies, especially SMBs, healthcare. I did a conference up in Chicago recently where there's like 70 different healthcare business owners that were in the room. I asked the same question. There was 3 of them had Google Analytics set up on their accounts, which I thought was wild. Only 4 of them were using AdWords. But then I asked them, well, what's the purpose of your website? They're like, well, so people can see us. So, in the auto industry, there's a lot of different purposes we have for the website. We want them to call the dealership. We want them to schedule service. We want them to fill in a form submission or chat with us or engage in us in some way. But when you look at across the industry, the percentage of people who do those macro conversions, those conversions that are, here's my contact information so that you can bug me and follow up like crazy, and I don't want to give that to you because the car industry has a lot of bad vibes over that kind of thing. People have been got before, right? So there's a lot of micro conversions that we're also focused on too. what are some of the indicators where they're not going to submit a lead or reach out and contact you, but they're still shopping and fulfilling the purpose of the website, and they're doing the things that we want to do that are going to influence them to come to the dealership. So how effective are we in driving traffic from the home page to a search page where they can see a lot of different inventory, to an actual piece of an actual vehicle on the lot, a page for that. Similar to in healthcare, people want to meet the staff and see who they're talking to. That's a big influential page where the most conversions happen that we see across our network on that meet the staff page, because they want to say, I want to see what my doctor looks like so that I can start beginning that level of giving trust. Or to the hours and directions page, or to the fill out the paperwork page. So one of the recommendations I have is figure out what the purpose of your website is, and then set up goals, micro conversions for the lesser, maybe not quite as valuable conversions, but still are the things that we want them to do. And then macro conversions that, for some of those larger goals, so you can start measuring across every page across your website how effective you are in doing that. There's so much power in the information that Google Analytics has. And this is for a single site, so one of the things, as you're looking at just a couple of the different reports, and this is just a small amount of the reports that Google Analytics has, and there's more robust platforms, but Google Analytics is about all you need for a small to medium-sized company that's getting thousands, tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of visitors, because there's a lot in here, is if you start comparing these results across other similar websites and see conversion rate for different types of pages, you can start A/B testing, even within your own client network, what works better. So then you can start saying, well, this search widget has a higher click-through rate to the search pages than this one because it's simpler maybe. Maybe there's only 3 options instead of 4. Or the color stands out more and contrasts more with the background of the home page, or however that works. And when you have a large enough network and you have all these goals set up for all these different pages, and you start measuring the actual behavior of consumers, then you can start seeing, you can start resetting expectations. And so you bring on a new client and you say, okay, I know it can be here in my click-through rate from the search results page to a product page, but you're down here. And so right away, you take your whole network of data with all these different pieces for similar companies, bring on a new client, and you can double their leads in a month because you have realistic expectations that are set based on the data and consumer behavior happening on the site. So this is something that is not happening as much for small to medium-sized businesses. So it's a big opportunity for us as a community to take that SEO message one step further and say, let's make sure that we are creating traffic and we're understanding what consumers are looking for, but also let's make sure that we're going after the traffic that's doing the things we want them to. And how well are we in doing the basic marketing piece where it's someone wants to buy something, I have something to sell, and connecting the dots and making it as easy as possible on the site, right? So, should have done water instead of soda. That was kind of silly. So, we'll start with increasing traffic here as the first half of this. It's exciting. We know exactly what people are searching for on Google, right? People are going to Google. Again, I want to buy what you have at your store to sell me. We want to be found in those kind of searches, and we know what people are searching for. Search Console, how many folks have Search Console set up on their, right? And are you guys looking at queries as part of that, right? So this is one of those things that goes back a long way. This is, some people would consider it SEO 101, maybe 201. But there's, again, when you're looking at data in aggregate, and maybe you just have one client in a particular industry, and that makes it a lot harder. When you have 5, 10, 20, and you start aggregating all that data, you can create more insights into, well, these kind of searches are happening in this market 50 times more often than this other market. And you can say, well, that's because I don't have the content to supply that. So when you're looking at all the different search queries, and take a look at this too. This is some foreshadowing. 3 words, 4 words, 2 words, 3 words. You're going to see for a lot of the small to medium-sized businesses that long-tail search isn't quite as big as we might think. And I'll show you a study we did a little bit on that, which is pretty interesting, right? And then AdWords has the same information in it. What are people searching for in the market? You can actually get a whole lot more query data through AdWords than Search Console, because Search Console is only where you're showing up with an impression, versus AdWords is you buy different keywords, and especially if you're very broad about it, you can see all sorts of different searches that are happening in the market. And AdWords has the same kind of information where you have clicks, impressions, your CTR, average position, all those kind of things, but it also has conversion data. So all the data that is important to kind of help you weight what the how successful or how important the different queries are that we're going after. So again, when we're looking at that, and we can start looking at different areas where we see certain words come up more and more and more often, and you can aggregate that, and I'll talk about how we did that in a second. You can start setting an SEO priority plan where you can start measuring and seeing how effective you are in ranking for those things. And then again, as you build out your network, and if you have more similar clients, you can start comparing that across different clients as well and saying, I know that I can achieve this kind of positioning, or that this is happening in this market and it's not happening in this one, so why? And start asking those questions. This is kind of interesting too, when you start looking at some of the CTRs here that are happening on paid search. Have you guys been following the last few years just how many more people are clicking on the paid search ads now as people are gaining that much more trust, and especially on mobile, where you have to thumb scroll like 8 times. I mean, not really 8 times, but thumb scroll down to get to the organic results. Those click-through rates, I mean, we're seeing some certain intent level queries where we're going after, where we're seeing in the 30s for just, I mean, and again, that's usually first position. We like that first position quite a bit for the highest converting keywords. But that's pretty wild, right? So this is an equation that we use internally. It's a pretty simple one, but it's like when we're looking at the aggregate at what's happening out there and how consumers are searching. And again, you go back to this last slide real quick, and you see lots of different words get repeated over and over and over again. You see things like SUV or for sale or Camry, used, new, and you start really, you total all those things up, and you multiply that by the number of impressions, and you multiply that by the winnability factor, and that's a conversation that's happened at other other meetups, right? Because winnability is, I mean, how can we actually win the search or not? In the auto industry, a car dealership's not going to win a Ford F-150 search because they're not going to beat Wikipedia and Ford.com, but they are going to win a Ford dealership near me, or Ford dealership Raleigh, or a Ford F-150 for sale. Where do I find the best place? Where's a car dealership that's open? Those kind of searches. And so knowing the winnability is an important part, and you multiply that by heavy search, I can win it, and what's the conversion rate for that? One of the things that we do for that, we define winnability on when we look at that query data in the aggregate. We're on page 3 or before, and we figure if we're on page 3, we can get to page 1. And you can filter that when you export that to a CSV or whatever, right? So that's where that kind of success can happen. And so, one of the big recommendations I have then, and this is where, content marketing was all the buzz, giant buzzword before. I think we overused it as an SEO industry, but it's more than just being an old buzzword. In fact, I think it's one of the biggest opportunities that exists out there, is because when you know that people are searching for so many different types of things, how many pages are on our websites that satisfy those searches? The more granular we can create the content on our website to match the intent of those different searches, the more we're going to see those conversion rates go up, and people are going to do the things we want them to do. As a for instance, in the auto industry, there's a difference in the intent behind someone who is looking for 2018 Honda Accord for sale in Raleigh versus 2018 Honda Accord lease incentives or finance rates. And so if you can create a plan where you can create content that is incredibly efficient and cheap to produce, and this is where I think it's going, then you're going to be able to create way more content to satisfy those searches, rank organically, and use that same kind of information for your SEM play. So, I see a lot of competitors out there or other people in the space that, we'll do 3 or 4 pages of content, maybe prioritizing and leveraging conversion. But there's becoming technology available out there today where you don't have to sit around and wait and go that slow. You can create content much more efficiently when you start using different technologies to kind of, I guess I don't want to give too much away, but you can populate hundreds of pages of content using different pieces within a database in a very efficient way. And so if you start researching and understanding those kind of things, pretty big opportunity for you to create way more content and prioritize it based on that equation that we just looked at. People are searching for this a lot, and there are 5 or 6 very also heavily searched for granularities or sub-topics of a particular search query. That, again, the more that you're satisfying the intent of those searches, the more you're going to increase that conversion.
How do you balance, I know that a couple of the Google updates from the December range were specifically looking at content that targeted kind of keyword permutations in sort of a low value way, potentially.
Yeah. How
do you balance between the generation of new content to fit searches versus creating more kind of skyscraper type content or
I think it just I think it has to be with a purpose almost. I mean, it's almost like, I mean, if we would have all along the journey of SEO from the beginning just said, is this content page going to be worthwhile enough, and is the information on this page meaningful enough that it actually is worth the click? I mean, Google gets to be more and more and more about like, okay, this person clicked on this organic link and they didn't come back and do the same search again, so that's the information they wanted. I think that there's a lot of ups and downs and jumps that we do with a lot of those different algorithm updates. I think that if we can just continue to create content that has a very meaningful purpose, and so that's where I think if you can create, like, I don't think you want to create content just for the sake of like trying to dominate a SERP, you know, with like 8 or 9 different things. I mean, we've seen people try to do that and fail over the years by kind of trying to get around what was going on. But I think that if you can say, this person is searching for something with a high enough volume and a purpose that is dissimilar enough to this one, then it's not, I don't think it's necessarily I don't just think, I mean, we've seen some pretty solid results by doing that kind of strategy. I think you're satisfying the search that much more. You know, Google's algorithm updates, they made one at the beginning of August. Did anyone get impacted by the one? I don't think, has it been named yet? The August one that, it's like the, what is it?
They call it Medic.
Medic, because it's all the medical and finance sites or whatever, right?
But it wasn't.
So it actually got the auto industry too, and so we just saw out of the blue 45% increase in organic month over month, which, I mean, we'll take credit for it a little bit, you know. But again, I mean, they're always changing, and you know, one of the things that I think as a best practice within the SEO world is if you're building your plan around the consumer and the expectations that you can learn and discover about how they're shopping, and you're following the best practices that our community looks at, you're gonna win. If you try to, you know, you could certainly take some of the stuff I'm saying and try to run maybe a wrong way with it and create 800 different pages of content that all mean the same thing, and then Google's gonna say, well, no, there's no difference here, you know. So I think you got to find that right balance of like what that search volume is and how different the different queries are to be able to create a plan that's gonna best match, again, the intent of the consumer. Is that a good answer?
Yeah.
So again, that's one of the reasons why, you know, we also look at these queries in volume, and we look at what are the different searches that are happening, and we call this right to win SERPs. So we know that there's high search volume for these types of keywords. We know that the conversion rate's high, and we know that it's very winnable because of the local intent keywords that are going after for small businesses. One of the things I wanted to point out on this is just look at the actual SERP. This is a 2018 Audi Q3 for sale Paramus search. It's a city right across from New York City, New Jersey. The same type of search has a very different. This is a 2018 Nissan Altima in Madison, Wisconsin. And so one of the things that, see how there's, you know, you had the map there on this one, and you didn't on that previous one, and then you do a search for Honda dealer near me, and then all their Google My Business information comes up. So I think also when we're looking at what's the experience, or what's the search volume that's going on, having a good understanding of what the SERPs look like, so that can also help us prioritize our efforts between local SEO or in this case, let's get more reviews, make the photos look good on the Google My Business page. That stands out quite a bit. Or, are we getting any of the featured snippets coming up for different searches if you're, more of a content brand and trying to drive a lot of traffic to a blog or those kind of things. Here's again that Ford F-150 search. This is an example of not all SERPs are created equal because the dealership's not going to win this because the winnability factor is not there. You're not going to beat Ford.com like I mentioned before, or Wikipedia, or Car and Driver. That's who wins those searches. So understanding again that a lot of searches might be happening, or you might be paying for a lot of searches in your AdWords. Not all searches are winnable, so that's why that equation of included winnability along with conversion and search volume. But when you create content and an experience on your website, and you build authority, and you're increasing your links, and you're doing all the different SEO best practices, you can start showing up for some of those broader searches because Google starts assigning the authority to you where you beat, in the auto industry, you can beat Cars.com and Auto Trader for things like cars for sale in Upper Saddle River, which is another city right across the way from New York City. When you create an authoritative website that is full of rich content that satisfies all those different searches, and you're increasing your authority and doing all those other pieces, you can start winning those things because you're building a website that is really, really helping satisfy the intent of the searches, right? And so that's the reason why, I see so many different posts on, different websites within our community that say SEO is dead or keyword tracking is dead and all that kind of stuff. And it kind of drives me nuts because when you look at all the queries that are happening, people are repeat querying still quite a bit. It really does still exist. And if we're prioritizing based on that winnability and the intent, and we know that certain searches are happening hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands or however many times for different small businesses, that helps us prioritize our efforts to know I'm in position 3, and if I go to position 1 and the CTR is 10% here and 35% here, how many more clicks am I going to drive to my website for this intent search that I want? So this is Moz, a cool tool that I'm sure a lot of you folks out there have seen or used. In the auto industry, for us, we actually just recently stopped competing with, or looking at our rankings and how we competed with other dealerships. Because other dealerships just weren't maybe using the same kind of strategies. And we started saying a real competition is actually when you look at the SERPs and you do some SERP analysis and you're saying, who is it that I'm actually going after and winning? It was the car gurus, as you and I were talking about when we got here, and the auto traders and the cars.coms. Those are the real people we're fighting against. So when you start really understanding who's my true competition because you did the SERP analysis and you know what the consumers are doing that drives traffic, then you can, again, keep prioritizing your plan. We can only do so much given the budgets or what we're charging customers, right? So if you have a great plan of attack that's based on what's going to create the most clicks to your website, the most clicks that you want to your website, then you're going to win all day. All right, take another sip here of the not water. So this is fun. Again, we're as we keep growing, it's really exciting because we just get this much more data. And a ton of conversation about voice search, and it's certainly here, and it's certainly something that we want to all be keeping track of because, I bet half the room at least has used it. But when we went through and we looked at the query data that existed, with Google, and there's some cool stuff from Distilled I wanted to share with you on the next slide. We looked at, I'm trying to not trip over my cord here. We looked at click-through rate for one keyword. That shouldn't be click-through rate. That should just be the percentage of total clicks. So of the 10 million queries that happened, one word queries were 9.5% of the time, 2 word 25%, 3 30, 4 21, 5 9.3. 95% of all the searches were 5 words or less. Which, when we did this study, I said, whoa, that is not what I expected because voice search is here. But it is, and it's transitioning. But voice search is not quite the same thing as someone who is maybe in the market, ready to buy something, doing their searches. So really having a good idea for what's happening allows you to maybe create a better plan. And a lot of times there's some of those granularities that you'll get some of those 7 or 8 or 12 or 13 or all 30 of the 14 word queries because you are creating that relevant content at a higher level, and you're prioritizing and you're getting that much more traffic by focusing on the priority. So what we did is we took all those things, we standardized all of our different keywords across our data set so that, you know, we made geo1, their primary geo, the word instead of Raleigh and Cary and Durham. We made it standard, you know, depending on, just as examples, local examples. Model 1, that kind of stuff. So we standardized that, and then we started looking at 1-word and 2-word and 3-word combinations, and at what % of the time did they show up in different searches. So again, this is just a way that I would recommend going about that query analysis, is if you can create all these different similar clients within an industry, and you can compare those across each other and consolidate and standardize those query sets, you got a much better idea of what's happening out there and how the consumer is shopping, right? So again, to build on that voice search piece and kind of where we are now, this is a study that Distill does. They do some cool stuff. If you guys ever read their stuff, it's one that I recommend. Here's how people are voice searching right now within their study. 50% of the voice searches that are happening are people that are saying, hey, remind me to do this thing that I'm going to definitely forget later, or, you know, play this song, or, you know, wake me up at, or those kind of control things where you're telling your device, your phone or your Echo or whatever to do something for you, but it's not necessarily a search for a product or a business or a buying decision the same way that right now people are still largely doing that through, you know, mobile and desktop and more traditional channels. Repeat queries like, hey, what's the weather? You know, how bad is this drive going to be out to RTP? Wasn't too bad. It was actually not too bad of a drive today. Personal searches like, hey, I want to check out that podcast that I listen to all the time. Will you play that for me? So about only 20-25% are like real searches, and a lot of those things are just looking for a business name or facts, or looking for those featured snippets to just tell you the answer to things. So when we're thinking about SEO and where we're at right now, this is where we are now for a lot of these small and medium-sized business industries. So again, this is stuff that I recommend when you're looking at your specific industries, that you go and kind of get a sense for what is happening out there in the aggregate. But here's kind of where we are now across the board as this still shows us. Again, don't forget the basics. I mean, so we want to do all these things. We want to build an SEO plan that really relates to what it is people are looking for and satisfying that intent. This is something that we'll save for all the previous and all the post SEO meetups in terms of conversation, but don't forget the basics. If you don't know what any of these things mean, there are some of the smartest SEO minds really in the world in this room. I mean, there's folks from search engine land that you know, speak at different conferences that are in this room. Actually, Mark just met today is overseeing a lot of that, or working with a lot of those different conferences. And every time Patrick comes out with a blog, it's like a must read. I need to get a Google alert for every time Patrick comes out with a blog. It's always good stuff. But very smart folks in this room, right? So if you don't know any of these things, ask us after, or just make sure that you know these things, because these are all kind of the basics, right? So before we jump to the conversion piece, this is a consideration that I was talking about yesterday, but I wanted to visualize it with some numbers. So you're in position 3 for like a Honda dealer near me search as an example. Again, auto industry example. You know, have a good idea that 35% of organic clicks for that type of SERPs are happening in first position, 10% are in third position. Again, the CTRs, those click-through rates, are not, they're quasi-made up, but I mean, there's definitely a major difference between first and third. Every SERP is different, tremendously different, and every device gives you different types of results too, because, you know, mobile has so many more clicks going to paid and that kind of stuff. But 35% of organic clicks at first position, 10% at third. We know based on the query data that there's 2,000 different impressions happening here in this market. So if you were to go from that third position to first position, there's 500 extra people that are looking for a dealership coming to your site instead of the other site. So again, if you take that information and you prioritize based on that search volume times winnability times conversion piece, then you can really set an SEO plan that's built around what's going to really drive up that traffic in a way that is that much more high impact than maybe not using that kind of model, right? But clicks are just clicks if the user's not shopping. So again, do we have a plan for our website? Do we have goals set up in our Google Analytics? Do we know how efficient we are for each of the different pages? Every page on your website should have a purpose, and if it doesn't, then it shouldn't be on your website. So does every page have a purpose, and are we measuring those different purposes? And starting with the homepage, because this is where a lot of folks will spend a lot of time making it look pretty, or doing 15 homepage banner rotators, or, I mean, if any of you guys have different clients out there that, all right, we need that 12th banner, or we're not going to sell this product the same way. It's like, well, they're spending 23 seconds on the homepage. The purpose of the homepage is to get them as easy and efficiently to the purpose pages on your website, the ones that actually convert. They're not exiting, they're not leaving. Let's get them to the page as quickly and efficiently as we can. So one of the things that I use, and I'm going to show you a quick example when combating, people who maybe are like, oh, we gotta make the headlights blink and flash, and we need that 12th banner. Is I put Hotjar. You can get Hotjar. Have you guys heard of Hotjar? Anyone in here? It's the data largely tells you what to look for in Hotjar. Hotjar is just a cool way to show, hey, the data told me this, and look, this is what's actually happening. So, an example for the auto industry. I'm going to go off-site here to a web page real quick. So we would go to a dealership maybe and say, here's what they're doing on the homepage. You can get this for 3 pages for free on the site. It costs more if you do more than 3. They're searching for a car, and they're going straight to a search results page. Let's look at this other example. What are they trying to do? They just got to the homepage, the recording started, and they're searching for inventory. What do you think is going to happen on this one? They go, they mess with this really clunky widget that should be a lot easier to use and simple because they're trying to search inventory, but oh, there it is, easy, right? So that's a cool tool. I think that is great to go show people like, hey guys, I got this data that maybe not is going to prove my point the same way as look at all these customers that are not rotating to that 12th banner, or they're not scrolling down to 4 or 5 rows down on the page.
So I was recently in market for a new car.
Yeah.
And with looking at Hotjar, one thing I noticed is that a lot of local car dealerships, like with faster navigation of searching through cars, like several of the dealerships like had checkboxes for like each price level. Like instead of just selecting, well, I mean,
So the usability is just insane, isn't it?
Yeah, so obviously there's like 1,000 different prices if there's 1,000 different cars on the lot.
Right.
Checkboxes instead of some type of toggle.
Yeah.
But I was thinking while I was looking at that, I was like, I bet they A/B tested that, and for some reason that won. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I guess.
I think in the auto industry that they actually probably didn't A/B test it. I mean, I think there's a lot less of that happening for small to medium-sized businesses, which is why, as an SEO community, if we can help out more small to medium-sized businesses with that kind of logic, but it's like, this makes sense, and even if you look at the different search filters for like if you're looking for a new vehicle, and different URL strings are created as you're doing different searches, like none of that's being prioritized to be more about the consumer, or you might have like things like color as the top search thing when it's really like the 7th most clicked on search filter, when you really want like price and then make and model. It's just they don't use that stuff enough as an industry, and as we're starting to delve into building out other verticals, we're seeing that other small and medium-sized businesses are even further behind. So it's but I think most of the CMSs in the auto space don't consider that kind of stuff, which is just like mind-blowing to me.
Yeah. I was interested if stuff that was antithetical to what you thought would be good user experience.
Yeah.
Was actually there because it actually provided, like, in that case, people would have to go through more.
Yeah.
Scroll.
More clicks. Every single click that happens is a percentage of people are gone too. Right. So it's like make it easy, make it more efficient, right?
Right.
Whatever happened to, somebody told me about web beacons a long time ago, and for analyzing user exits and problem determination, but also seems like it ties into this the Hotjar in that it gives you retention information if you did some big data analysis. Is that still being used?
We're not using that. Is anyone using that in here? That could speak to that?
Basically, your users, some percentage of your users is transmitting where they're browsing as they're browsing. So you're using them and their mouse overs and their pages that they get to, and it's leaking data to your back end, which you can then do analysis on.
I mean, so a lot of that stuff is in, like, Google Analytics has a lot of that, and I mean, the IP will show like what the location is, and I mean, there's a lot of great tools to heat map what's actually happening and what's getting clicked on, and those are great to see, especially as you're doing that analysis. The beacons we use are like the ones that are like, you put them in the store, so if you've been to the site, and then you can kind of validate, okay, good, and then you ended up in the store too, so it's just a good way to understand that Google is now making that part of their conversion tracking in AdWords for everybody, which is kind of exciting. Not that you can say that Google gets all the claim for that, because there's 24 different touch points, and attribution is a whole different story, I think, right? But so again, so I guess going back to this piece and hammering this one home, because this is a struggle that we have a lot, and a lot of small and medium-sized companies have. We did another analysis within all of our different dealerships that we worked with. So again, this is going to vary by industry, and so this is the kind of stuff, though, on the conversion side that you say, if you really understand what's happening on your website, you can prioritize and work on your website in a way that's you're going to be working on the things that matter the most. So a lot of requests coming in for making homepage rotators or hero images, or all the different terms for it, 12, 15, 20 of them. We found out that 80% of all the clicks across our network on the homepage were going to either the navigation for a search, or just clicking like a search widget that had a toggle. Only 6% of the clicks that happened on the homepage were happening on that rotating banner. So spending a ton of time on these different things. And the first position of those 6%, 46% of those were the first banner. And then anything after the third banner was less than 1% of the total clicks that were happening on the website. So really didn't make a whole lot of sense to be spending a lot of time and efforts on that. Instead, what we wanted to focus on was, how can we make sure that the website is operating as efficiently as we can? Because the homepage is still getting the most clicks, because that's where a lot of your brand searches are go. And also with the understanding that every single click that someone takes to go to a different page outside of where you're trying to get them, that purpose page is the term we use, means that someone's going to bounce and exit and leave the site. So we started measuring internally the click-through rate from different points on the website. So you can look at some of those page path reports that exist within Google Analytics, and see the previous page path from different purpose pages and figure out where the traffic's coming from to help shape this. But what we saw when we looked across the auto industry, and I think that the variance is going to be even higher in some of these other small and medium-sized businesses within each of their different verticals, because there's no standardization, is that the percentage of people that were coming from the homepage and clicking through to the search result page where they can look at the inventory, which is the purpose of the site. This is the breakdown of the last 100 stores that came through our traffic versus conversion process, patent pending. Kidding. But you can see, some dealerships had websites that only 20% of the people that were on the homepage were getting to the search result page. So again, this is like, well, got to fix that right away. Again, that's where, when we have a good understanding of all these different data points across all these different areas, we can say, look at all these ones that came in here. What do you think needs to happen to the homepage to make it more efficient so that we can get up here? What are all the things that they're doing right that are getting them close to 70, 75% homepage to the page we want them to go to click-through rate? Let's mass apply it to all these ones down here. What do you think happens to conversions as we drive more people to the pages that convert? We get more of them, right? So it helps to set a lot of those expectations for us in terms of what success is, and we can keep resetting, and then we can keep testing on the top level. All these ones that are successful and happening there, why is it happening, and what can we do to A/B test and even use our own client network to learn more? And that's not even a bad thing. I mean, we don't have a lot of pushback from our partners, because they love the fact that we're testing things all the time, because they know that they're going to get better because of it. So you don't get a lot of pushback even from clients doing that. And again, I said this so many times because it's true. I mean, so it's another reinforcement for why it's so important to know how efficient we are in getting people where we want them to go as quickly as we can. Because there's still folks out there that say, you know, I want to make sure that I get people going to at least 8 or 9 or 10 pages on my website. And it's like, well, you want to give them 8 or 9, 10 different chances to leave and not get what you want them to do? Like, what are you trying to get them to do, and how efficient can you do? That's why things like bounce rate and time on site and pages per visit those are numbers that I just don't really care for all that much anymore, because I care more about how successful am I in getting the person who had an intent, something that he or she was trying to work on, how successful am I in getting them to do that exact thing? You know, blogs and a website, you're gonna have a much higher exit rate than different pages, but you know, blogs have a different purpose too. And that's getting people maybe on the stimulus side through social media, kind of interested in different areas, and then you know, re-engaging them through retargeting. So again, if you can set different expectations for different types of pages, and every page has a purpose, then you're going to create that much more. So, this is more like e-commerce and auto and those kind of things that have search result pages. Just some easy wins that we found. Have a lot more easy wins that we have. We have a checklist of like about 60 different things in a homepage that we need to make sure and go through and do based on a lot of those homepage and CTR success clients that we've been able to aggregate through that data. But do they have a search widget? How easy and clean is the navigation? So many people on their website have all sorts of clutter on their website, and so people don't know what to do. Make it simple. Simplification is really helpful in getting people to go to where you want them to do. If you give people more than 3 options, they're not going to even click on any of the options because they don't know what you're trying to get them to do. So are you directing them easily to that piece? All your purpose pages, you know exactly what those are, and are all of those pages easily clickable above the fold on the home page? And all the pop-ups that are, what did someone call it the other day? Parasites. I like that one. Parasites on the site. A lot of people put a lot of outside company stuff on a website, and it clutters up and slows it down, and it doesn't create as many efficiencies if you have too many of those things. All your phone number and directions, and then how often are we playing as users across the site? You know, if we're working on the site all the time, are we asking, you know, our wives or our husbands or boyfriends or girlfriends or whoever, hey, will you check this site out and play as a user for me and give me some feedback on how easy it is for you to use? Because a lot of times we just can't even see that stuff, and even if the data's in our face, I mean, just ask other folks to do that. And so one of the reasons why we use that homepage to SRP is what we call it in the auto industry, a search result page. VDPs, vehicle detail pages. There's an acronym for everything in the SEO community, right? But 61% of all the email leads were happening for any automotive dealership when they're on the search result page or the VDPs. I think more would happen if we were more efficient in getting people there. 27% of all the phone calls were happening on those pages, which when you consider 2/3 of phone calls are happening for service, that's like almost every sales call. So when we're going through our website and we're looking at all the different pages and the results and what's going on in each one, and we're defining purpose, where are most of the activities happening that you want to have happen? Where are most of the phone calls or most of the blog signups or newsletter signups or whatever the purpose of your primary purpose is on your site is, where are most of those happening? And then, okay, let's look at the previous page path and figure out where most of that's coming from, and start really digging into what are some ways that I can either simplify that path or that journey or increase that click-through rate. And so these are numbers that I think oftentimes we kind of forget, but if we're driving, 500, 1,000, 10,000, a million different visits to our website, every 1% increase in our conversion or the efficiency of the site is how many more people end result doing what we want them to do. And this is one of the things that's just not looked at in our industry the way that I think we can be pushing along with the SEO efforts that we do. So a few more easy wins. You can tell the difference in slides between the ones that I have made and the ones that our designers made, I think, right? I made this one. How easy is it to click through to a product page from the search result page? Again, we talked about this a second ago, but are we looking at how people are behaving on the website? So when you're doing a search on a search filter and you have different URL strings, are we looking at those strings and saying consumers behave in this way? I mean, there's a lot of technology out there where you can actually adapt your search filters and your website to accommodate what the user is doing in the past, so the more you make it as easy for them to do what they want to do based on that big data, and there's a ton of it within that Google Analytics, make it easy so that there's fewer clicks and people do way more things that you want them to do, that they want to do. Mobile click to calls, make sure that it's easy for people to make a phone call if that's one of the purposes. We found that once you have more than 3 different form submissions, the decrease in conversion is pretty significant. If you have like 6 or 7 or 8 different buttons to click, they're not going to click a single one because they're like, oh man, I don't even know what all this stuff is, but it looks like a circus with all these different colors. And then merchandising is still just as important as it ever has been, and the brand itself, of course, and how your inventory, compare to your competition. And again, just another reinforcement where we tell different dealerships that we work with, we say, okay, you have a new car manager, a used car manager, an internet manager. That's true. There's actually a job, internet manager, manages the internet in the automotive industry. That's what we're working with. But it's funny. We kid about that all the time. Our president is the one folk on our one person on the team who's not from the automotive industry. He's just like, internet manager. I'm like, what the hell is that even a title? So we talk about that all the time. But we say, you're the new car manager, so put new car search result pages as your home page, and you just always look at that. And you are the used car manager, so put the used car SRP pages on your site. So if you're working with different companies and they're your clients, and you have to just say, hey guys, here's our recommendation. Each of you guys have to take a different page on your own home site, have that as your home page, so that you're always seeing that and seeing when things change, or considering that like that's your page, and we found that to be very helpful in just the idea generation part of the process. We're doing on time. Good. 20 minutes to go. I've only got like 2 slides to go, so we'll have some Q&A time and all that stuff. But we talked a lot about big data and the data aggregation, and so this is one that we've seen a whole lot of success with. That is neat when you build a lot similar clients across the similar types of websites. If you have a lot of Shopify websites and you're going after e-commerce, you can create a lot of similarities in how things are working. So we look at it not what's my average dealership doing, or what's my average business doing, or the median business. We look at what are those, what's the standard deviation really, like what are my best doing, what are my worst doing, because we learn the most from the best and the worst. So how we look at things, I'm not going to go through each of these percentages because that would be too boring, but you can see like for averages in some of these cases, like 0.77%, top 20 at 1.16, 0.28, that's a pretty big range there between top 20 and bottom 20. And so when people look at averages can, you can make numbers say whatever you want them to say. But if you're starting to look more at statistics, and I think this is an area that the digital marketing community is going to keep going, you start learning a whole lot more from that best of the best and then the bottom of the barrel to create hypotheses that you can fact check or A/B test or try new things and really learn what's going on in a way that you can then set the expectations for what are the top 20% doing and compare that to anyone who comes in. And if you're doing that across 50, 60, 70 different areas on your website that are important, that are areas that you can see an increase in the purpose of the website, in the leads, the micro, macro conversions, whatever you're going for, then every new client you come in, you can say, hey, we're going to change this, and this, get you up even to average because you're in the bottom 20% here. And you start seeing major increases and build that trust with your new clients that much faster because the expectations are set based on data set that has been tried and tested and proven, which is pretty cool. So again, just consider this one, another slide I created. I don't have the design background really. You got 5,000 people coming to your site, your email conversion to your site's just 0.8%. You want to just get to like the average 1.6%. That'd be doubling your form submissions. So like as we're looking through and making decisions, because we've created all this SEO traffic and all this SEO value, are we considering just all this traffic coming in, how every 0.5% or 1 or 2 or 5% conversion increase or click-through rate increase or efficiency we can create through some of the data sets can affect the overall output? Is the bigger opportunity traffic or is the bigger opportunity conversion? And let's consider both as we come up with our plans. So that's all I got. What do you guys think? Questions? Any questions, any thoughts, anything else, or is it networking and beer time?
So, I worked at Water Chevrolet. So I worked at Water Chevrolet.
Oh, that's right, that's right. We had a conversation like a few months ago, yeah.
It was interesting how the corporate and the dealership worked because the corporate site was being pushed on us.
Mm-hmm. Sucks.
I tried to get like a private company to, so we had two sites. One was the official site, one was the one I was trying to kind of rogue set up, which was kind of interesting because it was fighting the corporate was not easy.
Yeah.
And then I went for a regional GM meeting where I met all these marketing directors. So my question is, what do you do when you do everything in your power, but when someone lands on the site, there isn't for conversion?
Well, I mean, so on the corporate side, so the industry manufacturer forces you to use certain CMSs, or in some cases just one. In the case of Chevy, it's just a CDK website. So since I'm live, I'm not going to say too much negative. But what I would recommend on those kind of situations where the site doesn't convert as well and it doesn't rank as well is we go through a de-SEO process and we just make it like as hard to rank as possible so that our secondary site ranks that much better. So I mean, we really think that's what we call it de-SEO in some manufacturer cases. I don't think for Chevy though, we'd actually like literally just take that URL and apply it to our new site, make the other website's URL like long and preposterous and just stupid to look at. So that it wouldn't rank, and then we would still go through and at least like update specials and incentives on the de-SEO'd site. But if you go through a process where like you eliminate all the meta, you get rid of all your H1s, I mean you get rid of any kind of like alt text or anything, I mean you can make it so that it's not going to be seen that well and just still make it still functionally good enough you'll get some of that. But we see like, that's when we're like excited about decreases. It's like, yes, traffic decreased by 85% on this site. So that's what I'd recommend with that kind of thing, and then really pump up the value of your other secondary site.
And is there like a CMS you recommend for the opposite of the, like when you say don't use this, use this?
Probably dealer on if you are looking for like an easier to use back end. If you've got some experience with WordPress, Dealer Inspire's got a pretty good site, and Fusion Zone is an up and comer in the space that does a pretty good job.
Thanks.
Make sure Fusion Zone updates their URL structure on their thank you forms to not include email addresses though.
Okay.
That's great.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody.
All right, guys, so you're welcome to hang out, socialize until about 8. And quick show of hands, anybody feeling like a beer this evening going to be headed over to Rookies? Anybody doing that? So there is a small contingency that's going there, so if anybody wants to join in with that group, that'll be at about 8 o'clock this evening. Thank you much for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, man.